Amazon, you awake?
Yes, I'm here.
Amazon, give us a flash briefing.
Jamie, here's the latest from your flash briefing. In NPR News.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden travels to Florida later today. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports with 1 week to go before the election season wraps up, Biden will lend his support to Democratic candidates.
President Biden is expected to reiterate the importance of protecting Social Security and Medicare benefits during his speech today in Fort Lauderdale. Biden and congressional Democrats have repeatedly accused Republicans of wanting to cut the programs. Later, the president will travel to Miami to campaign for Charlie Crist, East Florida's Democratic nominee for governor. Biden will also lend his support to the state's representative, Val Demings, who's challenging Republican Senator Marco Rubio. The midterm elections are crucial for the Biden administration. The outcome will determine what the president can get done for the rest of his term and whether any of his remaining policy proposals will go through Congress. Windsor Johnston, NPR News.
Authorities in San Francisco say the suspect accused of attacking the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will be arraigned this afternoon. Suspect David DePape is facing federal charges such as kidnapping and state charges such as attempted murder. Paul Pelosi has been hospitalized after he was struck in the head with a hammer and his hands and arms were injured. Open enrollment on healthcare.gov begins today. It runs through January 15th. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports this year more families will qualify for subsidies.
It used to be that if your employer offered an insurance option that was affordable for just you couldn't get subsidized coverage in the insurance marketplaces like healthcare.gov or one of the state insurance exchanges, even if adding family members made that employer coverage unaffordable. After a new rule from the Biden administration, if your employer coverage is unaffordable for your family, not just you can get subsidized family coverage in the marketplaces. Premiums are higher this year, but so are subsidies. Experts say for most people, costs shouldn't have gone way up. It's also worthwhile to check to see whether there are new plans or options
we know
where
all
you
the
live
costs are higher,
that might
but
be
they
a
shouldn't
better
have gone way
deal
up.
than
Y'all
what
be
we have
okay.
this year. Selena Simmons-Duffin,
Vote for us.
NPR
We'll
News.
do it again.
The Federal Reserve is expected to announce another hike in interest rates when it concludes this week's policy meeting. Steve Becker reports inflation in the U.S. economy continues to run far above the Fed's annual target of
we'll just
2%.
keep increasing the interest
Since
rates.
the Fed stopped holding the federal funds rate near zero in March, it has raised that key short-term rate 3 percentage points. But with inflation still far above its 2% target, Chairman Jerome Powell and his colleagues will consider how much more they need to do to cool consumer demand and curb wage price pressures. For the fourth straight meeting, a 3-quarter-point rate hike is
way
expected
down,
tomorrow.
below
Steve
where it
Becker
is to be.
reporting.
And then imagine all the votes you would get.
The private company
Morons.
SpaceX is preparing to send more satellites into orbit today. From member station WMFE, Brendan Byrne reports the company's Falcon Heavy rocket is set to lift off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida later this morning.
The triple-booster 27-engine rocket is launching secret satellites into orbit for the U.S. Space Force.
Well,
Once launched, the two side boosters will land at nearby Cape Canaveral. Their return will bring multiple sonic booms around 10 minutes after launch that could be heard across central Florida. This will be only the fourth launch of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket. Its first launch in 2018 sent founder Elon Musk's Tesla into space. The rocket can send heavier payloads into higher orbits. SpaceX is working on its next heavy lift vehicle called Starship, with the first orbital launch coming in the next few months. For NPR News, I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
It's election day in Israel. This is Israel's fifth national election in a little more than 3 years. Polls show the country remains deadlocked. Former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking to return to office. The winners of the Israeli election might not be determined for days or even weeks. Brazil's incumbent president, Jair Bolsonaro, has not conceded defeat in Sunday's presidential election. In fact, he hasn't spoken publicly at all. The election has been won by rival and former Brazilian president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. However, dozens of truckers who support Bolsonaro have escalated their blockades of roads throughout Brazil. I'm Cooper Coleman, NPR
Oh, that's
News.
taking politics too far.
In the early 70s, Ernest Jackson wrote a song that just happens to describe the
Amazon.
state of the
Skip.
In weather. In Seattle, it's 44 degrees Fahrenheit with cloudy skies. Today, you can look for showers, with a high of 50 degrees and a low of 41 degrees. From NASA.
Okay.
NASA will host a media teleconference at 12 p.m. EDT Thursday, November 3rd to discuss the status of its Artemis I flight test that will launch the Space Launch System, SLS, rocket from NASA's Kennedy
Yeah,
Space
we're
Center
gonna
in
do a
Florida.
launch, and
The
we're gonna
uncrewed
talk
mission will
about
send
it
the Orion
before we do it.
spacecraft beyond the moon and back
Let's
to
hold
Earth
the
before
meeting.
future missions with crew.
Yeah, we'll just talk about it.
NASA and commercial cargo
days.
provider Northrop Grumman are targeting 5:50 a.m. EST, Sunday, November 6th, for launch of the company's 18th resupply mission to the International Space Station. NASA released the results of its second agency-wide economic impact report on Thursday, demonstrating how its Moon to Mars activities, climate change research and technology, as well as other work generated more than $71.2 billion in total economic output during fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, how much of that came from the government?
Media accreditation is open for SpaceX's 26th commercial resupply mission for NASA to the International Space Station. Liftoff of the SpaceX Dragon cargo spacecraft on the Falcon 9 rocket is targeted no earlier than Friday, November 18th from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Okay, Amazon. Off.
Pilots from the U.S. Naval
Amazon.
Test Pilots
Off. Amazon. Tell us a joke.
What do you call a hen that counts eggs?
A hen that
Anathema chicken.
Okie dokie. Well, have a great day wherever you are.